Hello, Connecticut, and welcome to the Paid Leave Podcast. The title basically says it all. I'm Nancy Barrow, and I will be delving into this new state program and how it can help you and your family. This podcast will give you information you should know about Connecticut paid leave and maybe just a little bit more. Connecticut paid leave brings peace of mind to your home, family, and workplace. Welcome to the Paid Leave Podcast. Hello and welcome. And today's a very special podcast because it's a partnership podcast with the WBDC, which is the Women's Business Development Council, and the podcast will be shared on their podcast, Courageous Conversations with Fran Pastore, on their website, which is ctwbdc.org. The WBDC turns 25 this year. It's a quarter of a century old, and that is huge. I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of the Women's Business Development Council and the chairperson for Connecticut Paid Leave, Fran Pastore. We'll find out about her interest in paid leave, the WBDC, and a little bit about who Fran Pastore is. I am so happy that you could be here in the studio live with me, and I am so honored to have you here today.
Oh, gosh. Thank you, Nancy. I'm so honored to be here and honored to meet you. I've heard so much about you.
Thank
and,
you so much.
Of course, the infamous Andrea Martin-Reeves, who we were just talking about. To work with her is just the honor of my lifetime.
We were just saying how fantastic she is. As the CEO of Connecticut Paid Leave, I've never really met anybody like her.
She's a natural resource for our state, and how lucky we are that she was available and ready to take on this role a few years ago. And it's just been great.
Something I found out about you is I didn't realize that you were such a globalist. Like, you have been everywhere, like Rwanda, Ethiopia. What makes you want to do that and reach out and go somewhere completely different and help women and business? Because that's what you do.
Mm-hmm. I guess I would start by saying that we have all these preconceived notions about women from other cultures or people from other cultures. And I've always been interested in people. And so when I had my first opportunity to go to Rwanda and help these genocide survivors open the first ice cream parlor ever in the country, they didn't have ice cream. I remember working with my team because we were taking our curriculum and bringing it to Rwanda. And the team that I was working with through the Business Council for Peace as well, we were all saying, okay, we have to really change this curriculum because, these women don't have the level of sophistication. Well, when we got there, we took the curriculum and we threw it in the garbage because one of the things that I believe binds people and transcends cultures and socioeconomics is the passion that women have around taking care of their families. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, was the most inspiring experience that I have ever had, in that learning how women across the world go into business or want to be prosperous and want to be successful so that they can take care of themselves and their families and make their communities a better place.
Well, are you planning to go anywhere else?
I don't have any plans right now. I think the last trip was, right before the pandemic, which was Turkey, which was really wonderful. And I think that I am looking for other opportunities and talking to some colleagues that do work around the globe. But right now, with WBDC's 25th anniversary and the pandemic work, I really haven't even had a minute to even think about those other opportunities because there's so much to be done right here at home, right here in our state. And I'm just honored that WBDC has had the opportunity to be a part of our state's recovery.
Yeah, that was really interesting that you got really involved in that. How did that happen?
So I think what happened was I sat on the governor's transition team and was part of the economic development committee. And so from there, developed relationships with people. And when the pandemic hit and small businesses were closing around the state and childcare businesses, 70% of our childcare businesses closed, that meant people couldn't get back to work. And I think the governor realized that most of these people were women. And so it's really wonderful to get a phone call from the lieutenant governor or the commissioner of OPM and DECD and say, we need your help. And immediately we were thrust to the front lines. And within the first 4 months of the pandemic, our clientele increased by 650%. The number of people that needed help was astronomical, and just identifying the resources and learning what to do.
Like the loans that were coming from the federal government, things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, small micro businesses, the types of businesses that we work with, single member LLCs and sole props, they did not understand that they were eligible for the PPP, for example. And so they were really disproportionately impacted in a big, big way. And most of those folks that were disproportionately impacted by COVID, most of those business owners were women and people of color.
Really? So that's where all your sole props are. I didn't realize that.
Exactly. Main Street, Connecticut Main Street businesses.
Right, which is really unbelievable. I have a friend who is a sole proprietor, and she is a therapist. She's working from home and loving working from home. And so there's sort of this hybrid notion, too, that might happen. Do you think that's going to affect women more?
Absolutely. In fact, I was reading an article this morning in the Times because most of the people, when we heard about the Great Resignation, the article read that, we thought people were just leaving the workforce. But what we're seeing is those women who were on the front lines, the childcare providers, the nurses' aides, the retail workers, the hospitality workers, they just didn't want to be in that environment anymore.
Yeah.
And so, what we're seeing now is those folks are transitioning to other types of work and they're upskilling, right? There's so many opportunities right now to upskill. So I think there is going to be a hybrid for some businesses, but clearly people don't want to work in environments that are inconsistent with their belief system and their pride. Right? We know what waiters were going through and waitresses were going through and home health care workers. They were on the front lines and they weren't really the first to get the help.
And we had so many businesses close and not reopening.
Exactly.
That is devastating. And so many restaurants, like you said, closed and aren't coming back. And that also is a problem for those workers trying to find work now.
Exactly. And I think anywhere we go, we're seeing, I can even drive down this street and you'll see, help wanted signs, right? So I really believe that what this state has been able to do over the past 2 years, the resources that this governor has put in place to help restaurants, to help the frontline folks.
Yeah.
What we've done in the state around childcare, the money that we've put in the hands of childcare providers to help them open their doors, really, I believe, putting women and the most vulnerable populations first and providing resources for them. I know that just at WBDC alone in the last 18 months, we've put about $3.7 million in the hands of women-owned businesses around the state. The majority of those are childcare providers, but women from all walks of life. In fact, we distributed $350,000 last week, and we visited one of those business owners who, and we visited her on Wednesday. She does tours in Mystic, ghost tours, cemeteries tours, historical tours. Connecticut's becoming that destination again, and her business is really booming. And it was a wonderful experience to give her this grant that really comes from our state and financial institutions to see her grow her business and really pivot her business at a time when, during the pandemic, things had kind of fallen off for her.
So during the pandemic, you gave all this money out. How did you get that? Is it all grant money or are there donations that come in?
Sure. So it's a combination of both. We have two different grant programs. One is the Equity Match Grant Program, which are grants of up to $10,000 to women-owned businesses who operate in our state and the owner, majority-owned woman, lives in the state of Connecticut, right? Those are grants of up to $10,000 to pivot your business. And the genesis of that program was that I had a conversation with the lieutenant governor one day. And that particular day was the day that the results of the PPP loans from the federal government that came to Connecticut came out. And what we learned from those loans, from those statistics, was that about 75% of those loans went to businesses owned by white people. And of that 75%, the majority went to men. And I said to the lieutenant governor, this is going to destroy the state if we don't get capital into the hands of the most vulnerable businesses. And so her response was, well, what can we do? And I said, we need to do grants. And, a couple of hours later, she said, okay, I talked to the governor and I talked to Commissioner Lehman. And Fran, you have to go out and raise money from private sources, and the state will match what you raise.
Oh.
So, yeah, I don't know that Commissioner Lehman thought I was going to raise $1.5 million very, very quickly from every financial institution in the state. And that was amazing, the response, right? It was a phone call. We're launching this new program. This is not about general operating. It's to teach people how to be better business people. They're going to get not only a grant, but they have to commit to getting what we call in our industry technical assistance. And that means that we would teach them to pivot their business so that they can not only survive but thrive post-pandemic. And then the other program is the child care program, because as I mentioned, 70% of the child care providers in our state closed. And that was a phone call from Commissioner Beth Bai, who said, you know, these child care providers, they didn't even have the opportunity to apply for PPP because they don't operate like that. They need to become better business people. And can you help them do that? Yes, we can. Absolutely. Okay. And then there were funds that the governor allocated through the CARES Act funding that he received. We're one of the few states in the country that actually deployed that money in this way. And we have put roughly $2.3 or $2.4 million in the hands of childcare providers, emergency grants of up to $60,000. So in Connecticut, where most states still have 10% of their providers that were closed since the pandemic, Connecticut's at about 1%. So we're doing really good things. And I really believe that the way that we've handled our response by partnering across federal, state, and community and private resources and engaging the nonprofit partners on the ground, I think that's really to this administration's credit, is like it takes a village.
It's amazing that you could do this so quickly. I mean, do you have great relationships with most of the banks?
Well, I think to be fair, you know, it didn't hurt that this program was being endorsed by the lieutenant governor.
Sure.
It certainly didn't hurt that the state said, we'll match it. And, banks know that women-owned businesses are the fastest growing segment of our economy. Right now, Black women are the fastest growing segment and Latinos right behind them.
Fantastic.
So banks want to do business with women.
And why is it growing so much right now? Why are women able to take the leap right now? I think women sometimes are very intimidated by taking the leap to owning their own business.
I would agree with you there. 25 years ago or 27 years ago when we first, had this concept of the Women's Business Development Council, it was really hard to get traction. It was really hard to get traction. I remember those days, those early days. It was not easy. And a lot of that had to do with some antiquated laws that had been on the books for many, many decades that really limited women's ability to access capital in their own name for commercial purposes.
That was like, what, 1988?
Right. So 33 years ago, right? 34 years ago, there were banking laws, not company laws, not particular bank laws, but state laws, state banking laws on the books that prohibited women from accessing capital for commercial purposes without a male co-signer.
Oh, it makes me so angry when you say that.
Mm-hmm. But the residual impact of that, right? Women still have challenges accessing capital, whether it's in private equity, venture capital, whatever it is, we still have that. And I think the reason is because the people that are sitting on the other side of the table don't necessarily look like us. Mm-hmm. So again, I feel like our state is very, very fortunate because Allison Malloy, who is a director at Connecticut Innovations, has partnered with First Lady Annie Lamont, and they've launched Tidal River, which that initiative is to get more women to think about investing in women-owned businesses so that more investors look like us. Right? So that's pretty amazing.
These are amazing things that have been accomplished in a short amount of time.
Yes, including paid family leave in this state.
I know,
right?
Which is great. When did you start to invest in that? Was it prior to it even becoming a law? Were you one of the advocates that really, really wanted this pushed into a law?
I really, really did want to push into a law, and I did work collaboratively with all the other organizations that did such an incredible job getting it passed, and I'm happy that some of those women are now state legislators that worked so hard on this. I think the reason for me was that I had experienced personally what it was like to work while taking care of a very, very, very sick loved one. And then as an employer, I had an employee who had cancer, and I had an employee who gave birth to a baby that was born 4 months early. And so what we did at WBDC was we created our own short-term disability policies, but it wasn't the same as paid leave, right? But in our case, both of these women had their own personal health care issues. And the thought of not paying them when they were dedicated employees just did not resonate with me, right? Because you want to take care of people. It's hard to find good help. And especially now we know that we have 109,000 open jobs in this state, and we don't have the people to fill those jobs. And so while this wasn't the case then, I knew that it was better for my business for these people to come back to work. I had all of that experience and very passionate about paid leave, and really honored to be appointed to the board by Senator Duff, and then I'm honored to be elevated to the chair role. And because I want to be in my role, what I hope I can be for paid leave is on the advocacy side.
Well, I'll just say that I saw your tea that you were doing down in Washington, D.C. With Senator Duckworth, and you effervesced about Connecticut paid leave. Like, you really are such a supporter. I just sat there. I was like, she's so proud. She's like,
I am.
You're like a proud mama. What is it about paid leave that you feel was so needed?
Well, I think a lot of it is because of the space that I operate in, which is mostly women. And so my constituency at WBDC is 99% women. I hear about what women are going through on a regular basis, and the truth bears out in the statistics, right? So we know that the majority of folks that are using paid leave are women. We know that they're using it during childbearing years, and we know that they're using it for bonding time. I'm really, really impressed with the number of fathers that are taking off for bonding time.
Isn't that the greatest?
It's really amazing. And
it's fantastic.
I have a couple of friends of my daughters that have children, and the fact that their husbands were able to be home with them when they gave birth, and the fact that her husband was able to, take that time off and be together. And this is not about women. Paid leave is not just about women. It's about people, and it's about our culture, and it's about our society and how we can be this great nation, but yet we are not taking care of the people that are part of this great nation, that make up this great nation, right? So, the fact that we're one of only 2 industrialized nations in the world that does not offer this on a national scale is very disturbing to me. And I feel like we're lucky to have Rosa DeLauro, who is just
a rock star,
amazing woman leading the charge in Washington for us. So that's why I'm passionate about it. I have my own personal experience. I see the people that work at WBDC have issues and have experiences, and then I know across the board, across every reason to take paid leave, women are the majority of those claims.
It's really wonderful. I think the program is so great, and it affects people that really need it.
Absolutely. And I think it just gives people the opportunity to share the burden of responsibility of those precious, precious few weeks of life when you welcome someone new into the world. So I think it's an important societal shift and a cultural shift. So that's how I feel about that.
But I think that we need to get this that's in Connecticut nationally. I don't know what the culture is nationwide, why we can't get this passed.
Well, I'm going to go back to what I said to you earlier about women and accessing capital, right? When the decisions are being made about you by people who don't look like you, and when the decisions are being made for you, one of the things that I learned when I sat on the National Women's Business Council, we did a study, and the study was 2 identical resumes. One had a woman's name on it, one had a man's name on it. They were both asking for capital for their business. The woman was sent back 6 times to get more data and more information. The guy gets funded first time around. And again, I'm going to go back to why. Because most of the folks sitting on the opposite side of the table don't look like women, and we still have all of these biases. So I believe that because we give birth to 100% of the population in this country and around the globe and around the world, right? How can we have people that don't look like us continuing to make those decisions? So it's really simple. We just need more women in positions of leadership and power. So,
are you seeing more women getting in the corner offices? Are you seeing more women being CEOs?
Not enough. And, in Connecticut, we only have 1 female CEO of 1 Fortune 500 company. We have 5 female CEOs of smaller financial institutions. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's going to take. There are all kinds of initiatives out there. We need more women in positions of leadership. It's really simple. I'm happy that we've seen such a surge, but we need to continue to do that on both sides of the aisle. It doesn't matter which party. We need women because we bring a perspective to the table, and our voices need to be heard more than ever right now. So I'm hoping that WBDC can be a witness to and a part of what I believe must happen, especially in the times that we're living in right now. Making sure that women across every sector of society have a seat at the table, and making sure that we bring women together to use their voice to affect change for themselves, whether in the business world, in entrepreneurship, in other forms of leadership, political or otherwise, at the corporate level. I want WBDC to be a leader in making sure that women have access to the resources they need to be economically successful.
What do you see for this next year for the WBDC?
Well, I'm excited to keep these grant programs going
because
I can see the impact of just a small amount of capital and the impact that it has not only on the life of the business owner, but on their employees, their ability to do more and achieve their goals and be a resource for our state and contribute, as you said earlier, to our economy as taxpayers.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the point.
And so right now, my big focus is making sure that we continue this grant program and that we are good stewards of the federal, state, and private dollars that are coming into the organization.
It's interesting, too. I was watching one of your panel discussions. These women were so empowered. That was just so beautiful to see. And that's what they do with women at the WBDC.
One of the things I loved about that panel was that every single entrepreneur on that panel had a personal experience that drove them, was the catalyst for them to do what they wanted to do. And that is usually the reason that women enter politics as well. Because they're really passionate about something and they want to see change happen. And so what we see at WBDC is what we're seeing across the country, which is a tremendous increase in startups and people leaving the jobs that they don't want because they see that they'll hit that middle-level manager position, and then everything drops off because they're going to have children.
Right.
And so there is a lot of inequity there. We get phone calls. A lot of the corporations that support our work call us frequently to say, can you help us? We need a way to get women into a pipeline to the top. It's not that people don't want it. It's that the work-life balance, if there is even such a thing, really hits women at that childbearing age. And they are faced with decisions because of the lack of flexibility. So that's one silver lining, I believe, that we can hope to expect from the pandemic and these hybrid.
And coming out of the pandemic, are you seeing changes? Are you seeing more success with women in business? Are you seeing more minorities getting into business?
What am I seeing? Well, definitely women of color.
That's fantastic.
And it's so fabulous. 30% of the women that have received grants from WBDC, from the equity program, have been women of color, and 50% of the child care providers that receive funds are women of color. So I'm really excited about that. That's a trend that we're seeing nationally as well. One of the things that I think we are really focused in on as a state is childcare and the need for childcare.
That's the number one.
There's just no question about that. And in order for women and families to go back to work and be prosperous, they need reliable, affordable childcare. Again, I feel like our state is leading the way on that as well.
What advice would you give someone who wants to start a business but is fearful? What would you tell that woman right now?
I would say that you don't go it alone, and that there are so many resources out there for you, especially if you're a woman in Connecticut. There's the Women's Business Development Council. There are other SBA resources. There are all kinds of resources. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is to be open, that your idea may not be 100% baked. You might come thinking you're going to do X, Y, Z. You might go through the process with our team, who are never going to tell you that your idea is good or bad. Never going to tell you that. You're going to figure it out for yourself. If it is good, though, we will be jumping up and down. And be open to accepting that. And don't do anything until you've talked to a professional. And our services are, 80% free of charge. So there's no reason why you shouldn't seek out, getting help. And everything now is virtual. So again, there's no traveling. and you can get an appointment quickly.
You have a podcast too, and is that one of the things that you're trying to do, is get more information out to the public?
Yes, exactly. I mentioned earlier that I love educating people. Mm-hmm. I guess you could say I'm a frustrated publicist. I love sharing information. I love sharing information not just about WBDC, but about other issues that impact women and vulnerable populations. I care about it very, very much.
And that's what you focus on during most of your podcasts. Well, some of your podcasts,
yes,
you do.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I feel it's really important that you can have those conversations with you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Because that's what it is. And the podcast is really interesting for Connecticut Paid Leave, because I feel sometimes people won't know about this program unless they need to use it. So a lot of people say, oh, it's some kind of something out of my paycheck. But they don't know exactly what it is until they need to use it.
Exactly.
So we need to keep giving people information.
Absolutely. I have to tell you that there's not a single person that I talk to, like if I go to a physical therapist or wherever I go, a yoga instructor, private yoga instructor. Do you know what paid family leave is? And she's telling me she's taking care of her mother and she can't teach as much as she used to. Well, are you paying into paid leave?
Yeah.
People don't think they need to hear it. It's to your point.
Yeah.
That if you don't need it, you don't know about it until you need it.
It's like car insurance. I say that all the time. Like, you don't think you're going to get in an accident. But when you do, it's really wonderful to have. I have sole props that I know, like my friend who's the therapist. She bought into the program. She couldn't wait to buy into the program because if she gets sick and she can't work and do her therapy sessions, she does not get paid. So when you think about it from that angle, it's really important for small businesses and sole props to really understand what this program can do for them. Any parting words of wisdom for you, Fran, before the end of this podcast?
Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so proud to be part of Paid Leave and love working with that team. It's so great to meet you in person.
Yeah.
And for folks that are listening that are interested in Paid Leave, WBDC has a partnership with Paid Leave, to your point, and we are doing, I believe, a series of workshops to help sole proprietors and single-member LLC small businesses learn more about how paid leave will be helpful to them and how to get them registered. So I would say that is one parting word. And the second piece of that is that we are going to be offering this new round of grants. And if you're a small business and you live and work in Connecticut and you're interested, if you have an idea that is going to help you pivot your business to access new markets or create a new product or service, check it out. www.ctwbdc.org. So check us out. I really, really recommend, if you have any interest or idea in applying, that you start early.
Start early, people. Thank you so much to you, Fran, for coming in here. Fran Pastore, the CEO and founder, of course, of the Women's Business Development Council and the chairperson for Connecticut Paid Leave. Fran, thank you so much. For more information about the Women's Business Development Council, go to ctwbdc.org. And to apply for benefits for Connecticut Paid Leave, just go to ctpaidleave.org. This has been another edition of the Paid Leave Podcast. Please like and subscribe so you'll be notified about new podcasts that become available. Connecticut Paid Leave is a public act with a personal purpose. I'm Nancy Barrow, and thanks for listening.